chosen one. You didn't drift away by accident. You didn't wake up one day and lose faith. Something pulled you, quietly, deep inside. There's been a pressure in your chest you couldn't explain. Not anxiety, not fear, a pull. Like your spirit was being called out of a place it could no longer survive in. You tried to stay where you were told you belonged. You listened. You participated. You blended in. But something inside you stayed hungry, unfed, unmoved. You smiled on the outside while your spirit went silent on the inside. And at night, when the noise faded, a single question kept rising. Why do I feel farther from truth in places meant to bring me closer? You didn't leave because you stopped believing. You left because you started hearing. There has always been a cost to carrying depth in a shallow world. People like you feel things others don't notice. You sense shifts before they happen. You hear what isn't being said, and that gift became unbearable in rooms full of repetition but empty of presence. You sat through words that sounded right but felt hollow. You watched rituals continue long after the fire left, and your soul refused to pretend. So you walked away, not loudly, not angrily, quietly. And the moment you did, the labels came, confused, backslidden, lost. But what they couldn't see is that your leaving wasn't rebellion. It was obedience to something deeper than permission. Because long before buildings existed, the divine spoke to hearts like yours, before systems, before titles, before authority structures learned how to control access. Truth has always met people in open places, on roads, in deserts, in long nights where no one was watching. And lately, life has felt like that for you, wide, empty, exposed. You've felt isolated even when surrounded, misunderstood even when explained, strong on the outside, but privately exhausted. There have been moments you questioned yourself, wondered if you were wrong, if you should go back just to feel normal again. But every time you tried, something stopped you. Not fear, not pride, a knowing that once your eyes open, they don't close again. There is a reason crowds drain you now, a reason noise overwhelms you, a reason shallow answers feel insulting to your spirit. You weren't designed to be managed, you were designed to be led. And what's been happening lately isn't loss, it's separation. There is a process the divine uses with certain souls. Not everyone, only those meant to carry weight. First, they are removed from comfort, then from familiarity, then from approval. Not to break them, to unclutter them. Because truth cannot land in a crowded heart. So you were pulled into quiet seasons, moments where nothing made sense, where progress felt slow, where affirmation disappeared. You thought you were falling behind, but you were being recalibrated. While others were being entertained, you were being sharpened. While others were being distracted, you were being refined. And yes, it hurt. Loneliness always does. There were nights you felt forgotten, days you felt unseen, prayers that seemed to echo instead of return. But silence is not absence. Silence is where real instruction happens. There is a voice that only speaks when everything else stops, a guidance that cannot compete with performance. That voice has been teaching you how to recognize truth without packaging, how to sense alignment instead of approval, how to trust resonance over repetition. That's why you don't need to be convinced anymore. You know. You don't argue your path, you walk it. And that threatens systems built on dependency, because people like you don't need intermediaries. You don't need permission to connect. You don't need validation to obey. That independence is misunderstood, often attacked. Historically, the greatest resistance to awakened souls never came from the world. It came from institutions afraid of losing control. Those who hear directly are dangerous to those who profit indirectly. So you were subtly pushed out, not always with words, sometimes with coldness, sometimes with silence. And instead of fighting to stay, you chose peace. That decision changed everything. Because when you stopped forcing yourself to fit, your spirit finally exhaled, and in that exhale, clarity began to form. You started noticing patterns, seeing through masks, recognizing when energy didn't match language. You became quieter, not weaker, deeper. You stopped needing to announce what you carry. You let it mature, This is what happens to those meant for alignment, not applause. You're being trained in discernment, in restraint, in depth. Not everyone gets this training. Most would crumble under it. But you're still here, still seeking, still listening. And that tells the whole story. The truth is, some souls are not meant to gather in large numbers. They are meant to anchor. They don't absorb energy, they emit it. They don't follow trends. They shift atmospheres. And those people are always taken through wilderness seasons, not as punishment, as preparation. Isolation teaches you who you are without reflection, without applause, without opposition. It strips you down to essence. That's why your journey has been so internal lately, so invisible. You're being built from the inside out. Soon, you'll notice something changing. Your calm will feel unshakable. Your words will carry weight without effort. Your presence will speak before you do. Not because you learned more, but because you unlearned what diluted you. You were never meant to belong to structures that require silence from truth. You were meant to walk in alignment with something living, something that moves, breathes, guides. And that connection doesn't require walls. It requires honesty. So if you've felt alone, hear this clearly. You are not abandoned. You are being positioned. If you've felt misunderstood, it's because your language has changed. You speak resonance now, not repetition. And if you've felt the urge to stop explaining yourself, that's wisdom arriving. The path you're on is narrow because it's precise. Not many can walk it without distraction, but those who do carry light without noise. You don't need to prove who you are becoming. Time will reveal it. What's ahead of you requires clarity, not crowds, depth, not display. And when you step into what's next, you'll realize this season wasn't about leaving anything behind. It was about coming home to yourself. Stay steady, stay listening, stay honest. You're not behind. You're not lost. You're exactly where those who are meant to hear clearly always end up. What happens next is subtle, almost invisible to anyone watching from the outside. There is no announcement, no confirmation email from heaven, just a quiet shift inside you where old desires start losing their grip and new ones haven't fully revealed themselves yet. This is the in-between space, and it's uncomfortable. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. And this is where most people panic. They rush back to familiarity. They cling to noise. They numb the tension with distractions. But you didn't. You stayed even when it felt empty, even when days blurred together, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. Something was happening. Deep restructuring doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with pressure. The kind of pressure that forces truth to the surface and pushes false layers out. That pressure has been working on you quietly, rearranging priorities, dissolving attachments you once thought were essential. You've noticed it. Things that used to excite you feel hollow now. Conversations you once tolerated feel draining. Environments you once fit into now feel misaligned. That's not arrogance. That's attunement. Your internal frequency has shifted, and your outer world is struggling to keep up. There is a reason you've felt the urge to withdraw more than explain. A reason silence has felt safer than speaking. When something sacred is forming inside you, it instinctively hides. Not out of fear, but out of protection. You don't expose seeds to storms. You don't announce construction while the foundation is still wet. You let it set. You let it strengthen. That's what this season has been. A setting season. You've been learning discernment not from books or voices, but from friction, from disappointment, from seeing who stayed when you stopped performing, from noticing who only recognized you when you fit their expectations. That awareness sharpened you. It hurt, but it clarified. You can't unsee what you've seen now, and you're not supposed to. There were moments you questioned if you were becoming too detached, too distant, too different. But what you were really shedding was dependency. Dependency on affirmation, on agreement, on being understood. You are learning how to stand without leaning. And that kind of strength only forms in solitude. This is why the path narrowed. This is why distractions fell away. This is why certain doors closed without explanation. You didn't miss out. you were spared. Some environments would have delayed what is emerging in you. Some connections would have diluted your clarity. So they had to go. Not because they were evil, because they were incompatible with where you're headed. There is a calm being installed in you that doesn't react the way it used to. You've noticed it. Situations that once triggered you now barely register. Words that once cut deep now pass through without lodging. That's not numbness. That's authority forming. When you are no longer easily shaken, you become dangerous to chaos. And chaos senses that. That's why resistance increased right before peace settled in. That's why confusion peaked before clarity arrived. It always happens at the threshold. The closer you get to alignment, the louder the distractions try to become. But they're losing their effect on you now. You're not fighting them anymore. You're seeing through them. What's been developing inside you cannot be rushed. It requires patience, stillness, and trust. Trust that even when nothing seems to be moving externally, things are shifting internally. Trust that delays are not denials, but alignments waiting to lock in. Trust that you are not late. You are being timed. There is precision in how your life is unfolding, even when it feels unstructured. Especially then, because structure built by others would interfere with what is being custom formed for you. You are beginning to operate from a deeper center. Decisions feel quieter now, but more certain. You don't need to convince yourself as much. You don't need to gather opinions before acting. When something is right, you feel it settle instead of excite. When something is wrong, you feel resistance instead of fear. This is discernment maturing, and it's one of the clearest signs that your season of confusion is ending. Confusion belongs to transition, not destination. You're crossing over. Soon, you'll notice opportunities presenting themselves without effort. Not because you chased them, but because you're aligned with them. People will feel drawn to your presence without knowing why. Not to your personality, but to your steadiness. Your words will land heavier, even when you speak less. That's because truth carries weight when it's lived before it's spoken, and you've been living it in private. That private integrity is becoming visible. You won't need to announce your transformation. It will be evident in how you move, in what you tolerate, in what you refuse, in the peace you carry into rooms that used to drain you. Some will be curious, some will be uncomfortable, some will project their fears onto your growth. Let them. You are not here to manage reactions. You are here to remain aligned. There will come a moment when you realize you no longer feel the need to go back, not because you're bitter, but because you're complete. The ache that once pulled you forward will soften, replaced by a quiet confidence. You'll understand that this journey was never about leaving places or people behind. It was about shedding versions of yourself that could not survive where you're going. And you did that with courage, even when no one clapped for it. What's ahead of you will require presence, not pressure. Awareness, not anxiety. You've been prepared for that. Every silent night, every unanswered question, every moment you chose honesty over comfort. None of it was wasted. It was all calibration. And now, as things begin to stabilize, you'll see that the isolation wasn't meant to isolate you forever. It was meant to introduce you to yourself without interference. But you are stepping into a phase where your inner world and outer world begin to match, where you no longer feel split between who you are and how you live. That alignment is rare, and it's powerful. Protect it, not by hiding, but by staying true. You don't need to harden yourself. Just stay clear, stay grounded, stay listening. This is not the end of the journey, it's the end of wandering. From here on, movement will feel intentional, even when it's slow, even when it's quiet. Especially then, because you are no longer moving to escape discomfort, you are moving in response to direction. And direction, once recognized, never leaves you guessing for long.